Well, my next guest is a very talented hurler who was lauded last October when he wrote a searingly honest account of his battle to overcome depression. And since then, he's worked tirelessly to raise awareness around mental health. And just last month, he hit the headlines again when he wrote another very honest blog about the fact that he's attracted to men. Would you welcome, please, Conor Cusack, ladies and gentlemen. Well, you're very welcome, obviously.
Yeah, good. And joined all in wondering as well as the line I'm in Gante.
I know.
Bad form out here, like, you know.
Do you not waste time, do you? Well, that's
Valentine's night.
It is Valentine's night, but we'll get down to business, I suppose, by talking about that blog you wrote in October. Because it really came to so many people's attention. It was, as I said, searingly honest. And you wrote, it was called Depression is My Friend, Not My Enemy. And I was curious to know why you decided to put pen to paper, as it were. Why did you want to write such a thing?
Yeah, so I suppose down in my area in Clyne, you know, people would have known my story, and because I would have been very comfortable with it, people would have come to me from time to time, maybe looking for a bit of information or maybe recommending a book or something like that. And I just couldn't believe over the last couple of years how that's grown. It's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger over in the last couple of years. And I suppose I didn't see, you know, I've seen a very good concentrated serious campaign in the media in terms of road deaths from the National Road Authority. I wasn't seeing anything like that. Plus, I suppose we had the death of Niall Donoghue in Galway, being a GA player, and I'm a GA player myself. And I suppose the final thing was, there was a 75-year-old woman came to me in Clyne, on the street in Clyne one day, and I know her well. And she came over to me and I could see her hunching up and she was getting fearful, and she just said, "Look, I'm not feeling too well at the moment. Is there any kind of a book or tape that you could recommend?" And I was here to myself thinking, this is a 75-year-old woman. She's been on this planet a long time, and it's bad enough for her to be struggling with depression, but to have this added fear because of the stigma and taboo that's associated with mental health issues. And so I said, look, I have a guy that's been in that position. I know what it's like, and I've come out the other side. And I suppose one of the things with my dad is he's the kind of guy that's saying, look, if you talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. Yeah. And so I said, look, I need to sit down and put a bit of pen to paper, that if I only gave one person that bit of hope and comfort that's struggling with their mental health, that wouldn't have been enough, but it took off.
And boy, did it take off. When did you, I mean, at what age can one become aware that the clouds are forming? You might know it's depression because you're so young. So at what age do you think it started?
Definitely around the end of 14 or the start of 15, really? Early, definitely, you know, I suppose I'd been bullied quite a lot as a young kid, you know, but that kind of finished when I was 15 years of age, when I got strong myself. But panic attacks took over my life at that stage, and this feeling that I hadn't experienced before, and you know, it wasn't sadness. I'd known that when my nana died, I'd known that when we lost big matches with Clyne, I'd known that when I couldn't go to play with my friends because of bullying. This was something that was much deeper than sadness. But this was 16 or 17 years ago. There was no discussion of depression or mental health or anything that time. You know, a mobile phone was the size of a block, you know, there was no internet. So I had no idea what it was that was going on for me, you know.
And you had no one necessarily to talk to, because you were talking to a vacuum. You didn't know what you wanted to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no,
so it's desperately a lonely time.
Yeah, incredibly
I would have thought. So. I think you were 19 when things came to a head, were you?
Yeah, so I suppose I think it's probably difficult for somebody that hasn't experienced depression to understand it. Yeah. And perhaps that's why people sometimes maybe say, look, can't a guy appreciate the things he has in his life, you know? But, you know, when you're it's the simple things in life for me, you know, Ryan, that give me my most pleasure, you know, walking in the countryside in East Cork where I live, you know, hurling training with my teammates, listening to Donegal dueling on the radio on a Saturday night with a cup of tea and a few chocolate biscuits, you know? But when you're gripped in the abyss of depression, when its black tentacles are spreading darkness throughout your mind and your body, when you have waves and waves of anxiety and self-loathing flooding throughout your being, you know, well then it's impossible to appreciate things. To walk from your bedroom to the bathroom requires enormous effort.
It's a trial.
It's unbelievable, you know, when the sun is rising in the morning, it's only making you further aware of the darkness that you have inside. Watching the birds flying in the sky or singing in the branches again early in the quietness of the morning only reminds you of how trapped you are and how the music has died within. The radio is only a humdrum in the background, so appreciation doesn't survive in the world of depression. And my life at that time was, you know, I'd wake at 2 o'clock in the morning, literally in a bucket of sweat, not knowing where I was, and I'd go to the edge of my bed, place my drenched t-shirt over my mouth to silence my cries, and literally my tears would dry in the sweat of my skin. in a river of sorrow that flowed down my body and gathered in a boy-made lake at my feet. And I'd spend the next 6 or 7 hours kind of trying to come up with every excuse possible not to have to leave the house. Because, but eventually I'd relent and drag myself to the bed and face into a world that I was terrified of.
And you had to go to work.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And you were at work one day when the darkness just took over.
Yeah, so look, it got to the point, I'd been keeping all of this a secret, you know what I mean, because I was terrified of people finding out. I didn't know what was wrong with me at the time, to be honest. And literally, I hadn't energy for the fight anymore. I couldn't fight it anymore, and I didn't want to fight it anymore. So I was inside and work one day, and just inside in the middle of the floor, I just collapsed in the middle of the floor, and my body of bones and skin came tumbling down, but my inner world just shattered into a million pieces. My dignity, my hopes, my dreams, all went up in one big bang, And
where'd you go that day? I mean, who did you go and end up talking to?
Yeah, so my boss literally just took me home, back to my parents' house, and again, we didn't know what was going on for me, and I went to hospital a couple of weeks after and had a battery of tests, every test imaginable, and at the end of it, doctor just came to my bed and just literally said, look, we think you're suffering from depression. And it was the first time that I'd ever heard of the word, and the first time that I had some idea of what was going on for me.
Was that a release to hear a name, a label, if you want?
Yeah, definitely, but I suppose it was good to hear it, but at the same time, I hadn't a clue what it was, and what was...
Were you medicated as a result?
Yeah, so what happened for me then is I went into the psychiatric system, and basically every Thursday I took to my bed at that stage. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to be in the company of anybody else. And so every Thursday I'd go into the psychiatrist, and I'm not anti-psychiatry, right? But I can only tell my own story, and I always just got the feeling with psychiatrists that I was dealing with that they weren't interested in my story, they were interested in my symptoms, and just to put me in a box and say, this is Conor Cusack, he's a manic depressive, and these are the medication that we put on him, and I was never comfortable with that.
But psychiatry works for an awful lot of people.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work for others. And you were unfortunately one of those people who just wasn't working for you. And you were on how many pills at one stage?
Yeah, I was on about 17 or 18 tablets at one stage.
A day?
And I literally I just didn't know whether I was coming or going, But intrinsically, I suppose I always felt that these things weren't working for me,
Yeah.
But I suppose the lowest point was I'd kind of been to see a lot of different psychiatrists, and I was appointed to see this other guy, and he was the guy that I was placing my last hope with, really. And when I went to see him, what he suggested to me was electroshock therapy, where basically they pump electricity through your body in the name of healing. And I've worked as an electrician for the last 10 years, Ryan. I've got a lot of electric shocks in that time, and I can tell you, I never once felt good after any of them, I never went back to the world after and said, I'll give myself another rattle here and I'll feel good, you know what I mean? So,
well, you can laugh now because, but at the time, when you were confronted with this vista, you thought, not good enough for me.
Yeah, well, look, that was, when I came home, I came home in a frantic state because this was my last hope that I thought of getting a bit of peace and joy back in my life. And as I say, I came home absolutely frantic, but in reality, it was the storm before the calm, because 3 nights later, after I woke after just an hour's sleep. It was the only hour's sleep I'd known in over 3 days and nights, and 10 years of bullying and panic attacks and depression had emptied my reserves of fight, and perhaps my body and mind could have endured the death of 1,000 cuts, but theirs was a slow death by 1,000 cuts. And so I decided in that night, that I was going to end my life, and an incredible thing happened. A peace and a calm came over me that I hadn't experienced in years. And I could understand the relief that my mind and body were feeling, because they weren't going to have to endure the incredible physical pain that's involved with depression and the mental torture.
So you had made your peace with the decision to end your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And
what prevented you from going to making the ultimate?
So I had it all planned out, and I remember going down to my dad's garage, and I remember cutting a suitable length of the rope, and it's incredible that things come into your mind from time to time. As I was cutting the rope, I remember an image of a doctor snipping an umbilical cord coming to my mind. Gosh. And the contrast was blinding. He was holding a cord that nourishes life, and I was holding one that was going in one.
Yeah.
And so I had planned, I knew my dad and brothers were going to be going to a GA match on a Saturday night, and I knew my mum and sister would be going to mass. And so when they were gone, I could leave the house, and I had my area and all planned. But for some reason that night, and I don't know why, and my mum doesn't know why, but she never left the house to go to mass, and denied me the opportunity then to do what I was going to do,
And that brought you back from the brink, the fact your mother was still in the house and was around.
Yeah, well, it would have been suspicious if I'd left the house, because I hadn't left the house in 6 months at that stage, so it denied me that opportunity. But it wasn't the case that it was only a matter of putting it off. But I suppose I was incredibly fortunate in knowing a family friend recommended a therapist to my family, and I didn't want to go see anyone else. As I said, I'd given up.
Yeah.
But this was a psychologist, and you know, thankfully my family and my mother persuaded me to go to see this man. And from the first moment and the first time being in his company, my whole life transformed after that. You know?
Do you think the bullying that you experienced as a child fueled the depression in a sort of delayed reaction way? Would that be...
Absolutely.
Is there something in that?
Yeah, definitely. Look, when I was going through my therapy, there was a number of things come up for me, and I hadn't realised the damage that bullying had done to me, you know, because as a young kid you're told to bottle up your tears and don't show weakness, you know.
Man.
Exactly, you know, and I hadn't realised the damage it had done to me, and it was only when I went through therapy and I was able to unearth those fears and those emotions that I'd buried with that, that definitely was a huge part of it.
Because the photo we have here of you, I think you're on a lot of medication at this time. You just look like a very different figure to the one we see tonight before us. What happened? You obviously got quite heavy, and you were...
Yeah, so I suppose I was in my bed. And you know, I didn't really have a great appetite at that time. But as I said, the medication was bloating me out really, like, you know. And that's a picture of me there with probably my favourite uncle Liam Costin. And I was probably just kind of starting to start my therapy at that time, you know, and get back into society, you know. So I would think I was nearly 20 stone at that time in my life, you know.
Extraordinary. You're unrecognisable, I think, to the man we see before. So it's a great triumph. Well, we'll get to that in a second, I suppose. And I did want to talk to you about the other article that you wrote a couple of months ago, January 27th, I think you decided to write a blog in which you made another revelation to the world. And maybe you'd share that with us. I alluded to it there in the introduction, but maybe you'd share that with us now.
Yeah, so I suppose how the story came about was, you know, I do a lot of travelling with mental health issues and stuff like that over the last period of time, and I had the opportunity. I was invited by Neil McDonough, who was a cousin of the Galway Hull and Niall Donoghue, and Neil gave a powerful eulogy at Niall's funeral, up to meet Niall's family, his dad Francis and his sister Orla, and we visited his grave. And I had a long drive back that day from Galway, and I do a lot of my best thinking while I'm driving, you know. And I just said to myself, you know, the kind of work that I'm involved with, some people say to me, is it a burden? You're travelling all over the country in your spare time doing all this thing, and it's not for me. Genuinely, it's a real privilege for me to be involved in the work that I'm involved with. But I was saying to myself, coming back in the journey in the car, can I be fully authentic with the people that I'm meeting and discussing the serious issues that we're discussing if I have this part in my life where, you know, I discovered that I had an attraction to men, you know, and I
notice you don't say gay.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I suppose, you know, a friend of mine said to me the other day, he said, Conor, he rang me, he said, you know what, you were plenty of women when you were younger, are you sure that you're attracted to men, you know? And I said, well, I think I am, you know, so, but I mean, I actually don't like labels, Ryan, you know. I didn't like it when psychiatry was trying to put me in a particular box and say that I was manic depressive.
Sure.
I didn't like labels then, and I don't like labels now, because a label can never quantify the depth that's in every human being, you know.
So you're driving along, you're thinking, okay, you're attracted to men, but you've been hiding that fact from family and friends?
Yeah, so there was nobody know about it. No, it wasn't the case. You know, I can't say that I was totally comfortable with it, but it wasn't something that caused me a lot of anxiety either, you know. But I decided, look, that I needed to, if I wanted to continue the work that I'm involved with and to feel that I was being authentic and genuine with the people that I'm dealing with, I needed to talk about this part of my life. So I phoned back to Clyne, and I was passing my parents' house, and I said, look, I suppose these are the first guys that need to hear this, you know.
Yeah.
So I walked up into the thing, and I couldn't get the two of them at the one time inside the sitting room. My mum would be out making a cup of tea, and when she come back in, my father was going away somewhere else, and I could feel the butterflies in my stomach and my heart racing that bit faster, like the feeling you get the morning you wake up of an important championship game, you know. Yeah. But eventually, eventually the two of them sat down together, and I said, look, I need to have a discussion with you. And I said, look, I've been involved in relationships with women, but I've also been involved in relationships with men, and I found that I get a lot more fulfillment from being with a man, you know. And I knew that for my parents to have to hear that wasn't going to be easy, you know. And part of the thing about when you have to be true and authentic and real in what in many ways is an unreal world, it's going to cause emotional pain for people around you. But it has to be done, and I had to do that, you know. And I could see it wasn't easy for my parents to hear this again for a second time, you know.
Because your brother, Donald Logue, had come out How long before was it time-wise?
Yeah, I think
2 years, 3 years?
maybe 4 years or something for that, you know.
And here was their other son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can actually remember the day Don Loke telling my dad inside in the room, because I was in the room with him, and he was telling my mum and my dad that he was actually gay as well, you know. And I was here to myself, and I was thinking, Christ, Conor, not alone, you're not the only gay in the village, you're not even the only gay in your own house, you know.
But you kept it to yourself.
Yeah, I did. So, but anyway, I sat down and I told him, and look, as I say, it wasn't easy for me. And I left the house and I went down to my own house and I just got my stuff ready for work the following morning. And I was putting my head to my pillow that night, and the phone rang. It was my dad, and my dad isn't much of a man on the phone now. He's a man of few words on the phone, and I just answered. And I was thinking, like, where's this going now? Is he telling me you're gone from the family and gone from the wheel and gone from the whole lot of what, you know? But he said, look, Conor, I just want to let you know, look, your mum and I, we love you, and that's all I want to say, and good night. And I just said good night, Dan.
That's probably one of the most important phone calls you've ever got.
Yeah,
I can believe that.
And I suppose, look, the reaction has been really positive, you know, and it was a mixture of the funny and the serious, you know. I live on my own, so every so often, you know, I go for dinner on my way home from work to this particular restaurant, and there's a girl in there, you know, and genuinely she fancied me, you know, and every time I went in there, you know, it was a big smile, and she'd give me extra potatoes and extra meat, and she'd come afterwards and she'd give me a cup of tea and some dessert, and she'd never charge me for it. But my vlog came out on the Monday, and I went in there on the Tuesday, and the smile was gone, and there was no more extra helpings of anything, no dessert or no nothing, you know.
Did you?
And I suppose I got a couple of, you know, I got a few messages, you know. I have a couple of friends here tonight, you know. Kieran Duff, ex-Dublin footballer, and Kieran was probably isn't aggressive and as competitive a GA man that ever was.
Yeah.
But he's reflective of, for me, the support I've got from GA players, and his buddy Leo there, who's a bit of a character. And Leo sent me a text and he said, Cusack, you're still the same cock langer to me that you were last week. Like, you know, and
that's a good way.
Yeah.
Any adverse reaction?
Yeah, well, I suppose just one other thing. Look, I have an aunt at the moment, Kathleen Costin.
Sure.
She's married to Christy O'Leary in Bandon, and you know, she's going through an incredibly aggressive form of cancer at the moment, and she's putting up a really brave battle with it. And about 11 o'clock one night, she sent me a text saying, look, Conor, we want to let you know that we're all incredibly proud of you, you know. And for her to take the time out to send me a message during what's going on for her at the moment was incredibly important to make me realise how blessed I am in my life to have family and friends like that. But you talk about adverse reaction.
Was there any?
Yeah. So the Friday after my blog went out on the Monday, and the Friday I'd taken a day off work because I was giving a number of talks in Offaly and Tipperary and Waterford that day. And I came out the door in the morning, and as I was walking on the back of my van, I saw the word fag written on my van, you know, and I was there to myself, and the first thing came to my head was cigarettes. I was thinking, Christ, what's someone writing on my van, cigarettes? But it was actually the word faggot, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And I just got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was similar to the feeling that I had, you know, when I'd been bullied all those years ago. And for a split second, I thought about retreating back into the house, but I got into the van and was going up the road. But, you know, because of the personal journey that I've been on, Ryan, you know, I've this incredible independence of the opinion and judgments of others, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But I found myself as I was driving up the road in the van that I was being drawn back into that place where I was, and I first started to come back into society. After having the breakdown, being concerned about other people. Yeah. And like in the meantime, you know, I've played in county finals down in Cork in front of 35,000 people.
Not a bother.
Came on all final for a few minutes in front of 83,000 people and never had a bother, you know.
And then that awful word.
Yet here I was, you know, of a small world, and being drawn back into that place. But I go back to the point, I suppose, you know, I do a lot of my best thinking when I'm driving.
Sure.
And one of the great revelations for me during my therapy was that I realised that the people that were bullying me were actually victims as well, because they were in a place of darkness as well. And the incredible anger and hatred that I had in my bullies was transformed into a deep empathy for them people, because they were in a place of darkness as well. So when I was driving back, leaving Dungarvan at 12 o'clock that night to head back to Cork, you know, I was in a place of peace in myself again. But I know that the person that wrote that in my van isn't. And I know what it's like to put your head in the pillow at night and not be in a place of peace. And I wouldn't wish that in anybody. So my hope and my desire for that person would be that somewhere along the way they can break their own cycle of darkness, and that they can start to get that peace back in their life that I have. And there'll be no one happier than me for them to experience that, you know.
When you're driving, you toured the country a lot, giving talks. What's your central message you're trying to impart to people at these gatherings?
Look, I suppose the key thing, Ryan, that I want to get out of here tonight is that, you know, the graves of our dead that we've lost through suicide are not silent. they're sending out a strong, powerful message that's emanating across our country of the incredible hurt that our people are enduring. Over 500 of our people are in their own lives every year. Over 12,000 are being admitted to accident and emergency, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. What about the thousands and thousands of people that are living lives of quiet desperation and suffering in silence because of the taboo and stigma that's still associated with mental health? And, you know, there's a trend occurring, Ryan, and it's going that way. But, you know, the storms that are battering our country at the moment, we're powerless about them. But we're not in this issue. We can change this issue. I needed professional help to get me back on my path, on my journey back to health. But without a doubt, it was the support of my teammates, my family, my friends, the people in Clyne, that was equally as important. And, you know, the philosopher Rousseau says, there's no greater wisdom than human kindness. Never underestimate how important an act of kindness that you do for someone that's struggling. It could be enough for them to get through to the following day, and that could be the day that they make the breakthrough, and that could be the most important difference they ever make in their life. And we need to embrace the words of Nelson Mandela, where he said, our deepest fear as people is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're powerful beyond measure. We have the power to change this trend. We have a sacred responsibility to change this trend. We need to use that power, Ryan, to free ourselves. And by doing that, we'll allow the people around us to free themselves, to be able to throw off the shackles, to live their own lives, to be able to tell their story. And the world then will be a far better place for all of us to be.
Well, thank you for telling us your story. We've enjoyed your honesty tonight. Thanks a lot. Conor Cusack, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. That's something. We're going to take some music now. It's actually quite hard to believe that it's 25 years since my next guests released their classic album. It was a classic, Songs for the Tempted, and for many it was a special record, and it went on to spawn the hit singles that included Drag My Bad Name Down, Washington Town, and the song they're going to sing and perform for us tonight